53 locations, 7 states, and multiple people detained. The National Investigation Agency carried out a multi-state synchronized raid to destroy the nexus of Khalistani terrorists, gangsters, and drug smugglers. Amid the India-Canada row, the focus of today's raids was at dismantling this vicious nexus, their weapon suppliers, financiers, and logistics providers. These gangs are said to be based out of Pakistan, Canada, UAE, and Portugal. Now, the day-long operation, which started early this morning, had pistols, ammunition, large numbers of digital devices, and incriminating material being seized from 6 states: Punjab, Delhi, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan, Uttarakhand, and the Union Territory of Chandigarh. The likes of gangsters Arsh Dalla, Lawrence Bishnoi, Sukha Dunike, Harry Moore, and Narinder are all now under the scanner of the Indian security agencies. Remember, these raids were the 7th in the series of such crackdowns launched by the NIA after 5 cases of terror funding of Khalistani groups. Extortions and killings were registered in August 2022, and 2 new cases were registered against organized criminal gangs in July this year. Now, apart from these raids, there are also reports that India's IB, RAW, ATS, and the NIA will be holding a joint meeting soon. With this deadly nexus in the spotlight, how can India protect itself while also exposing and nipping the K-thugs right where it hurts? I ask my guests tonight. Let me first introduce them to you. I'm joined by Colonel Dinny, defense expert. I'm also joined by former Ambassador Sheel Kant Sharma, and strategic affairs expert Bharat Karnad also joins us on the show. Good evening. Namaskar, gentlemen. Thank you very much for speaking with Mirror now. First of all, to you, Bharat Karnad, these raids come at a time when India and Canada are going through a major diplomatic row, one of the strongest tussles that we have seen between the two nations. But it is also in line with the series of investigation and probes that the NIA has been undertaken since these cases were registered last year pertaining to this vicious nexus, this transnational nexus that goes on. How do you first see it? The fact that it is now not restrained within borders, it is now a transnational organized crime syndicate that the Khalistani groups operate through.
Well, look, it's always been known that the Khalistan cause was supported by these extremists, of course, but it was funded not just from the gurdwaras they have run in Canada and UK and Australia and so on, and as NIA said, Portugal, but also from the drug and dope running and gun running business that they have had on the subcontinent, meaning with the help of ISI and so on, where they run guns, they drop using, the tricopters and so on, drug packages of small arms and ammunition, etc. So this has been going on for many years now. It's not anything new. I'm surprised that the NIA carried on this thing, almost waiting for the Justin Trudeau kind of precipitation of crisis in bilateral relations for them to come out and haul up this network of gangsters and criminals and dope and gun runners and so on. And only incidentally, Khalistani, propagators. I think Khalistan is basically a political cover for the criminal activity that you mentioned is transnational, which it is. The basic, I think, root thing here by way of the manpower they're able to recruit is because the Khalistani sections of the Sikh diaspora all over the world, they can sponsor youngsters from Punjab And the fact of resident permit in Canada or any of these places is a great magnet to attract these youth who are, who have nothing better to do, or perhaps they are not very literate, etc., to be recruited into this cause. And then they have to prove themselves by doing all these nefarious activities. And then they get a sponsored visa into Canada, where they become the strong arm of these networks. So it's a vicious kind of a business they've set up, where these very extremists run the gurdwaras, some of the gurdwaras rather, and make a lot of money there. And it's a way of laundering the money, ill-gotten wealth that they have from India and other places. And so it's all mixed up. There's a lot of because there's a lot of money involved, and they have a constant supply of youngsters who are ready to do their bidding and engage in criminal activities, if only to get a visa to Canada or something. And so, this is a ready-made recipe for these guys to flourish. Whether it helps the Khalistan cause or not, it certainly doesn't, because now the UK government, the US government, I'm sure the Portuguese governments, all these governments have woken up to the fact that they have a snake's pit in their amidst them. And they'll be more careful, I suppose, in the future to screen people.
And clearly it's not just an Indian problem, as it was made out to be earlier. The fact is that the K thugs or the Khalistani problem is a global problem, and the world will have to see it that way if it has to nip it in the bud before it becomes a bigger problem. But Colonel Dinny, to you, the fact that, more and more youngsters are roped in for such purposes to carry out such organized crimes, how deep is this problem when it comes to our own states? The fact that for a state like Punjab, which has had its youngsters reel under the problem of, drugs, of unemployment, it's obviously very easy for criminals to target them and lure them. But how deep is this problem? You're somebody who served in the army. You would have more experience and more knowledge on this. Help us understand, should we, how concerned should we be when it comes to our youngsters being lured by such criminals?
Oh, definitely, ma'am. I think we should be very concerned about it. And I speak not only from my experience having served in the army, especially in Kashmir Valley and all, but also from being in a place like Kerala, where one has seen these NIA raids happening here too, post as a prelude to the PFI being banned, and also a lot of youngsters are gullible, and they fall into this lucrative kind of job which is there overseas, whether it is Gulf countries, whether it is Europe, or whether it is Canada, Australia, these kind of things. So as was mentioned earlier, that this multi-criminality and giving it an international kind of a kind of a feel makes it even more difficult for the agencies to track them. Now, what happens is that the criminals act internationally, and the prosecutors have to stop at the borders. That is the kind of problem. So here, there are enough of youngsters in our country who, for a very low or any kind of a favor or some kind of a job, they're ready to do anything. Like we see here in Kerala, there's a lot of gold smuggling happening, which gets linked to terrorism, and then it gets into bigger problems. Similarly, in Khalistan, this issue of Khalistan, we see the same thing, that there is a nexus between the organized criminals, who are linked with the terrorists, and they are given patronage by a political system across the globe. And for them, it's a kind of a funding which happens. So overall, no action is taken against them, and that is and what happens is that in the age of social media, these youngsters who go there, they project an image as if the kind of a glamorous lifestyle which they live, and that becomes a kind of a motivation for other youngsters to join. This happens in Kashmir Valley also. You would have seen all those glorified kind of terrorists which was there in social media, and similarly even in Khalistan terrorists we see, and similarly in the earlier in deep down south also. So there is an issue. And I think the NIA
so
has
what's the solution, Colonel Dinny? How do we stop our young boys and girls from, not joining these groups and from not getting lured by such people?
I think, ma'am, the best thing what we can do is to show what is the kind of the actual life which these terrorists, for a particular period of time, yes, it looks glamorous. But after that, the law will catch up. There's no doubt. Like, whichever country, they may give some patronage and all for some point of time. After that, we've seen every country will get behind them and they're thrown like, as a waste in that particular country itself. So I have know of so many cases in which after some time they get frustrated, they are left to on their own in prisons there, because after their utility they're just thrown away like anything. So this kind of thing should be highlighted. I think it is being done, but as a part of a this brainwashing, and also as a part of preventing the youngsters from joining this narrative that all is not glamorous as is seen, and all is not kind of a thing that you suddenly become a rich person, or you become so much influential as seen in the social media. That is not true. I think this thing needs to be done, and in that sense I think media has a major role to play.
Okay, Bharat Kannad, one of the reasons that we have been talking about as to why Justin Trudeau has picked up this right now and accused India with these vile allegations is the fact that, back home he has an election coming up, and, political undertones and political implications will make him do such things and rake up such issues. But on the other hand, his opposition is coming from somebody called Peter Poilievre, who has condemned, the fact that Khalistanis are targeting Hindu Canadians there. They are asking them and, threatening them to leave the land. Do you think this will continue after elections also? I'm not talking about Justin Trudeau, because he right now has made his government with Jagmeet Singh, who is a Khalistani sympathizer. But for Pierre Poilievre, in case he wins that election, do we still see the opposition leaders supporting anti-Khalistan groups and supporting those who speak against Khalistanis? Or would Canadian politics not allow him to do that?
No, look, whether Justin Trudeau remains in power or the Conservative Party comes back into rule again in Ottawa, the fact is that they'll have to be a lot more careful in handling the Sikh Khalistan issue that they have spawned over the years. If you recall, the Canadian system of law and order is so lax and so loose, almost criminally so, that you had the bombers of the Air India flight that killed 339 passengers, if you recall, in 1985, June 1985, which is the largest aviation sabotage incident ever. And the people who were caught were given light sentences, just a few years in prison, and then they were out as if nothing happened, And do you recall the kind of brouhaha over the flight that was shot down over Scotland Lockerbie, some years back, where the Libyan Muammar Gaddafi was blamed for it, and all the Anglo-Saxon, the quartet jumped up and down, and then they targeted him and killed him ultimately and deposed him. I mean, so you have these double standards that Jaishankar just mentioned in the United Nations General Assembly yesterday, wherein you have a very different way of perceiving things. The very same things that they can get away with, others are held to much higher standards. I think it's not going to work anymore. And the fact is, of course, India was not involved in the killing of this Nijjar fellow, but the fact is that the Khalistanis are now on notice, that the fact that they are in these so-called liberal Western countries may not offer them the protection they think they have from paying for their misdeeds in India. They can do so. They want to carve out a Khalistan, please do so in Canada. They have a lot of space there. but do not come out here and create trouble,
Okay.
because who knows, you might have, you might have a lot to pay for it.
Okay, Ambassador Sheel Kant Sharma, we've talked about how the Khalistani sympathizers in Canada are a very small minority when it comes to the diaspora community. We don't hear much from those who are anti-Khalistan in Canada. But do you think one of the solutions to this problem can also be the fact that those who are anti-Khalistan can in fact come into Canadian politics and lead the way? Because right now, Canadian politics is only seeing Khalistani sympathizers. Do you think that can be one of the solutions there in Canada?
Well, I want to mention three big points, which are there is a certain mutation in this global terrorism, in the sense that after 9/11, there was a global concert against terrorism. But now, in the last few years, the liberal opinion, the so-called liberal opinion or the woke in democratic countries, have somehow or the other shown a certain fatigue about fighting terrorism. So they are looking for scapegoats. Now, in this kind of a situation, the Pakistani handlers and their cohorts in Canada and elsewhere have found the Khalistan terrorism as a way, because they are projecting it as against India, but it is not against other countries, which is different from what the Islamic terrorism was, when 9/11 happened. So these Western countries were united. So today it seems they are actually complacent about it. That's the reason why I find the Five Eyes are also being invoked by Trudeau when he does this. And he is now pandering to his electoral constituency and doing nothing about fighting terrorism. Now, every aspect of this mutation is as dangerous, as volatile as the previous things were, and that danger has not gone away at all. So these countries where the NIA has traced Pakistan, Canada, Portugal, UAE, of these, they have been generally very open, liberal, and these fellows have found it easy going there. Now, important thing is to curb their activities and to combat them. But instead of doing that, this latest venture of Canadian Prime Minister has been to pander to their human rights and their freedom of expression. Now, this is most preposterous. How can you take this? And before India could really bring it to their notice, they have been discarding us. They have been, as has been said, last 2 years we've been sending them requests for extradition, but they have disregarded them. And so there is a big chasm between what they say and what they do. So our External Affairs Minister has rightly pointed out that there is a certain convenience, political convenience. Actually, he's very polite. Actually, it is political expedience which is guiding them. And for a short term, this is what had happened before 9/11, when Western countries thought that terrorism was India-Pakistan problem. And when it hit them, then they realized that it was global. And so there is a certain thing that these problems are, and how are they affecting them? The liberal Canadians, the liberal Sikhs, who are vastly outnumbering this fringe, are being intimidated and terrorized in these countries to join with them. And then, as has been described by the other speakers in this program, they have also managed to inveigle innocent youngsters into this game by enticing them to, for visa and getting them into Canada and Portugal or other countries where, rules are democratic. So they get them there, then they initiate them into these activities. And also there are reports about how they are trained for guns, and what has been found out by NIA all these, or what they have confiscated, are the new avatar, new mutation of global terrorism. All these latest technologies are being
Ambassador
used
Sharma,
by them.
at this point, I want to bring in something that Suella Braverman, UK's Home Secretary, said. She said that multiculturalism has failed in Europe and it threatens the security of the region. Do you resonate with that thought at all in the kind of crisis that we are seeing now?
Well, she has a point, because this multiculturalism, it is based on liberal democratic values. But there are these extremists who want to precisely misuse and abuse these liberal values, which is what has been done by global terror. So, and as India has been saying repeatedly for the last 40 years, that this problem can be handled by all nations coming together. You cannot say that this is not my problem, because sooner or later it will come and affect you, which happened already once. It has happened several times, and now they are trying to say, somehow the other trying to dismiss the Khalistan terror as again not against them. I think this is their biggest mistake. This will actually involve their democratic societies, open societies, into violence and mayhem, and then they are trying to pass the blame to us. They are trying to pass the blame on to us. For their own
Yeah. Colonel Dinny, these 5 acts of terror from Punjab that the NIA is probing and these raids are a part of, they've been traced back to a man called Hardeep Singh Nijjar, who's believed to be living in Lahore and is backed by Pakistan's ISI. In fact, reports now also suggest that Nijjar's killing can also be traced to the ISI. Do you find ground in this? In these reports, number one? Number two, there are also concerns about the fact that Canada might be turning into another Pakistan, with terror harboring from its soil, with terrorists conducting anti-India activities from its soil. But at the forefront, publicly, they maintain that whole statement and phrase and repetition of freedom of expression and diversity. Do you think that Canada is also now turning into another Pakistan?
Oh, absolutely, ma'am. See, first and foremost, we all know Pakistan's famous K2 project, Kashmir and Khalistan project. So they are behind this, is well known. In fact, I was hearing news that they're already looking for a replacement for Nijjar, is what Pakistan ISI is already planning for, a replacement of Nijjar. So this is nothing new in it. There is nothing new, absolutely nothing new. And we also know it. And I'm sure they also know that we know. So that is the first part. Second part, your question regarding Canada, that is very important. In fact, these, especially Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, his short-sightedness, I think will make Canada pay a very heavy price in the future, because you take any country anywhere in the world, whichever country has given this kind of soft kind of approach towards terrorism, they have bought it big time. Whether it is Pakistan, Afghanistan, you take it, any countries, any country, even for that matter, US 9/11 also happened because there were loopholes in the system due to which this attack could take place. So if Canada feels that a handful of people in the quote unquote freedom of expressions, these Khalistani terrorists, they will be given there, you can take it from me that tomorrow they will turn the gun towards these people only, because from there sitting there, they will not be able to influence much towards India. But what they can definitely do is terrorize people there in Canada itself, as was brought out by the previous speaker. There are a whole lot of Sikh community there who does not believe in this, but because of this potential violence against them, they are silent. And I'm sure in the coming days, these people, because it is a part of an organized crime, they just can't sit silent. So Canada will have to pay a heavy price in the coming future. You can just take it from me, because that is the way the nature of the gun is. You cannot take feel that this gun is going to be peaceful. I'm sorry, it will not happen like that. Canada will pay a heavy price. And then
but clearly they haven't learned their lessons. After the 1985 Kanishk Airlines bombing, they clearly have not learned their lessons. And we'll have to see how this really pans out for not just Canada, but the entire world, as these terror sympathizers are given a refuge there. At this point, I'll have to wrap this discussion up. Thank you very much to my guests tonight, Bharat Karnad, Ambassador Sharma and Colonel Dini. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for talking with Mirror Now and sharing your perspective on this big diplomatic row between India and Canada.